Morning. This is Thomas William Gardner. It's good to be seen. I want to talk to you about Valentine's Day. For years, we buy the candy, we buy the flowers, and we say nice things to our loved one. We buy the Valentine cards. But I really question if people really know what Valentine's Day is about. Oh, I know that they think it's about love, and I know that they think that it's about caring about people and letting them know on that one particular day and giving engagement rings on Valentine's Day and all those things. But do they know what it's about? How did it start? Why is it the way that it is? Why do you have to buy the candy? Why do you have to buy the flowers? Why should you say those things on that day? Why does it mean so much? Why the rose petals? Why the flower petals? Why the celebration? What's it all about? Well, I looked it up, and I kept looking. I looked in old books at the library, and I went online, and I kept researching, and I came up with these stories, and I think that you'll really enjoy it. San Valentino was born in Turin, Italy in the year 226. He died in 269. This is AD. AD. He was a very loving man, and it was said that he was a doctor. And then after he was a doctor for a while, he decided that he wanted to be a priest, and he was a very loving and very caring man. And there was another man that was the emperor of Rome at that time, a Caesar, and his name was Claudius II. Now, Claudius II decided that he wanted to have soldiers that didn't have a tie with anybody. In other words, they had a mother and a father and relatives, but no wife, no children, not anything to stress about while they're out in battle. And he thought that'd be a great idea. He was known as a great warrior. In fact, that's how he rose to power to be a Caesar, because he was a great warrior. He was called the destroyer of Goth. Well, when he came into power and he said that the soldiers couldn't marry, San Valentino said that that's not what God would want, and he kept marrying the soldiers. And then we're told that he was told not to do that. And then we were also told that pretty soon prisoners were being let out of prison, and they said San Valentino was doing that, and he was marrying soldiers, and the soldiers loved him, and the people loved him, and he was very popular. And needless to say, Claudius evidently started to hate him. Well, on February 13th to February 15th, this was a Roman holiday. And on this Roman holiday, that was the day that it's called Lupercalia. And on that day, that was the day that the people that were lovers, people that were drawn to each other, secret admirers, they would put letters in the edges of the stone and in the stone wall and in the cracks of the stone wall. And on that day, people would go up and they would pull the letters, and their secret admirer or their lover or whoever it was would have a letter for them about how much they loved them and how much they wanted to be with them, and now was the time to be married, or now was the time to be together, or whatever it was. And of course, everybody thought that was rather romantic. The only problem with that was at that time it was a pagan religion that had the holiday, and the pagan religion that had the holiday, they had priests, and the priest believed that you would take goats and dogs and cut them up into strips, bloody strips. And then when the women came into the square and they had their letters in their hand, they would chase them around and whip them with these. And the priest would either not have any clothes on or hardly any clothes on. and they would chase them around and they would whip them with this, and then they'd be able to, the women would be very fertile and they'd be able to have babies. Of course, this holiday was tied into fertility. I know, pretty crazy, huh? Well, that was all changed when Constantine came into power and he won a battle, and he saw a vision of an angel, and the angel told him what to do, and they were outnumbered almost 3-1, and yet he won and he hardly lost anybody, and there were thousands of soldiers involved. But that's another story. It's a great story, but it changed all the calendars. Well, at that time, this holiday was the thing, and Valentine, San Valentino, was a priest, and he got put into jail. And when he got put into jail for marrying a couple, and some people said it was set up, some people said it wasn't, and he was also suspected of freeing prisoners that were already married, or prisoners that he didn't think should be in the jail. And so he was now put into jail. At the time that he was put into jail, his stay of execution was going to be soon, but he had to go up in front of a judge. So the day came that he was supposed to go up in front of the judge, and when he got into the courtroom, a lot of people were there. They said, Valentino's here, Valentino's here. And they had the court case, and there was a lot of people there, a whole bunch of people there. And the judge hated Christians. See, the holiday's a Christian holiday, and it's about a man who loved Christ. But where did you ever get that when you watch television or watch the movies, or where did you ever get that? But it's how it was. It's about St. Valentine's. So he's in the courtroom, and the judge is giving him a hard time, and the judge said, he says, you Christians are all the same. He said, you pray and pray and pray, and nothing ever happens. And he says, my daughter's blind. What are you going to do about it? What's your God going to do about it? And he's carrying on, and everybody's, in a huff and everything, and they don't care for the Christians. Now, I have to remember, at that time, there were a lot of Christians, but it wasn't the national religion until 312, 40 years after Valentine would pass away, a little bit more than 40 years. But there were a lot of Christians at that time. So the courtroom looked over at Valentino, and Valentino says, well, bring her here. He said, what? He said, bring your daughter here. And so he went, and the people went and got him, and he had a big house, and he had statues there, and he had statues of different gods and everything. And he brought his daughter that was blind into court. And everybody looked at him, and Valentino said, child, let me look at you. And he looked at her. He said, come here. And she came closer, and he came closer, and he put his hands on her head, and he prayed up to God, and she started screaming, I can see, I can see. Now the judge, who was very bitter and very upset and hated Christians, now didn't know what to do. And he said, I didn't do it. He said, Christ did it. Jesus Christ did it. And of course, everybody there's going nuts, and he says, what can I do to be a Christian? What can I do? He says, well, in your house, if there is anything in your house that is pagan of other gods, other than the one true God, you must destroy it. And everyone in your house must change. And so the judge demanded that all his statues immediately be torn down. He freed Valentino, which really upset Claudius II. And so he frees him, and the courtroom, everybody's, you can feel the Holy Spirit, and they're excited. And the judge says, what else must I do? And he leads him to Christ. He gives him the prayer, and he repeats the prayer, and he accepts Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. And everything looks great, except there's one problem. Now Valentino's been released, and Claudius II finds out, and he said, I don't care, get him, put him back in prison. So he passed the test in the court, but he didn't pass the test with Claudius II. So Claudius had him put back into prison. And he's in there, and the soldiers are coming up, and he says, and they would look up, and he'd be in like the second balcony up there in a prison cell, and he could look out this window. And they said, that's San Valentino. They said, I want to marry this girl, but I'm not allowed to. Would you bless our union? And he says, of course. And he would bless the union, and they would get flowers and pull the petals off, and they throw flower petals up to him, and they'd thank him and everything, and they'd talk about the Lord and everything, and he'd shout down to them, and they'd be so excited. Well, this got around too, and Claudius was getting more upset. So one day, after this had been going on, and Claudius II had not set the date for the execution, the jailer walks up to him silently, and he looks around, and he said, I need to talk to you. And of course, San Valentino, Saint Valentine, is thinking to himself, well, sure, we'll talk. And he's probably thinking, well, this is it. He's going to give me the date that they're going to do me in, and this is how it's going to go. And he says, what is it? He says, the head jailer, he says, it's about my daughter. She's dying. She won't eat anything. We don't know why. She's listless, unresponsive. She doesn't pay attention to anything. He said looks terrible. Her mother and I are so afraid. He says, the relatives are afraid. He says, could you pray to your God for us so that he can heal her? And he's very sad, but he believes in St. Valentine's. He believes in him. He believes in God. He believes that God will work through him. He believes that. And so he says, well, bring her in. Well, when he brings her in, he says she came in with a cloak on, and the cloak was down because she was going to go into the prison. And of course, there was a lot of men in there, and they didn't want to draw any suspicion to her or anything, of what was really going on, because Claudius heard about this, that there'd be a big problem there. So they bring her in like that, and they bring her up to St. Valentine's, and he said, let me see your face. And she takes the cloak off of her face, and he looks at her, and Valentino's in love. He's now seen what he believes is the most beautiful woman in the world. And he starts talking to her, and he starts praying her, and he lays hands on her, and she starts saying things that she feels, and the power of God is there, the Holy Spirit's there, and she starts changing, and she starts eating. And he says, I'd like to see her every day and see how she's getting along, make sure she keeps eating. He said, I want to keep telling her about Jesus. And of course, now the jailer, he's a Christian now, and probably everybody around him is turning into Christians, Of course, yes, that's not told on Valentine's Day. You can see why I'm doing this. And it's such a beautiful thing. Now, when he was out, supposedly a woman came up to him, and she had epilepsy, and she threw an epileptic fit, and he got down, and he healed her through the power of Jesus Christ. He healed her, and St. Valentine is known in the Catholic religion as the healer of epilepsy. And that's where that came from. Now, there's a lot of different stories, but you have to put it together. And once you put all the stories together, it starts to make sense. So in the story that I'm telling you, he and this woman are becoming closer and closer and closer. And he starts to write letters of inspiration because he's stuck in the jail. And of course, he loves God and everything. And he talks about the Lord and everything. But he's stuck in this jail, and he doesn't, see anybody, except she does come in to see him. And she is getting better, and she's becoming normal. And of course, she's very beautiful. And of course, he gets excited to see her. And one day, on the 14th of February, Claudius II decides that he's going to behead St. Valentine's. So he takes him out. He has him taken out, and on the 14th, at a certain time during the day, he is executed. Now, on the day of his execution, everyone in turn, Italy, is talking about Valentine's. Everyone. And then they said, today's the day. Today's Valentine's Day. Today is Valentine's Day. This is the day that they're going to execute him. They're going to execute him. Today is Valentine's Day. Well, he gets executed, and at the time of his execution, it's said that the starlings and some other birds come back from Africa and in their migration, and they fill the sky. And at the moment of St. Valentine's execution, the sky turns black, and everybody repeats, they've just executed Valentine. It's Valentine. This was Valentine's Day. This was Valentine's Day. At the time of his execution, she reads her love letter. That's from Valentine. And at the bottom of the letter, it says, yours always, Valentine. Your Valentine. Your Valentine. Through the years, they start to say, they start calling Lupercala, they start to call it Valentine's Day before it's a national holiday introduced by Caesar Augustus. So they're celebrating it as Valentine's Day. Caesar Augustus takes all the pagan that he can out of it, but what is left are the love letters, are the flowers, are the roses, are the flower petals, are the miracles, the great love between two people. But what gets missing, and the part that bothers me, is through all this, who knew that this was a story about a man who loved Christ, that he would lay down his life for others so that they would pick up Jesus Christ, so that they would know Jesus Christ, so they would know the power of the cross, so that they would have salvation. Is there no greater love than anyone has than he lays down his life for his friends? Did Valentine not do that? Did Christ not do that? Was this not a terrific Christian? Now, when we're eating our chocolate candy, and we're paying too much for it, and we're paying way too much for the roses and the flowers, and we buy somebody an engagement ring, oh my goodness. Just remember, all this was about a terrific Christian. Well, these are just some of my thoughts. And I loved having the opportunity to clear this up. 1 year later, after the execution of Valentine, Claudius II was out on another campaign. And he was going to destroy the Vandals. And he decided that as Caesar and being a great general, that he would take care of it himself. So he went to lead these men out into battle. Strangest thing happened. It was almost a year to the day after Valentine had passed away, that there was a plague that came. And suddenly, all his men died of the plague, and so did he. Well, that's the story of St. Valentine. I thought you might enjoy it. These are just some of my thoughts.